Hey guys, welcome back to the What About AI podcast. I'm Sean Boyce,
James Perkins.
and the topic for this episode is about human resources and the changes that are expected to that job function as AI continues to get implemented and how much of their function actually is expected to be automated. So I've got some use cases here for what some
So human
heavy
resources become robots.
where we've seen this in use thus far is payroll company ADP has launched AI agents for over 1 million businesses already. That's hard to believe. It's just difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around. And I am going to read this list because it's pretty extensive and I think brings up some topics that we're going to want to discuss. But in terms of what those agents are doing, let's go through this list here. So, answering employee questions, running payroll, flagging tax issues, generating reports, obviously, and even initiating promotions. That last one's particularly interesting. I'm very curious to know more about how that works. But kind of the general consensus here is that a lot of the benefits that AI theoretically here is able to provide within the function that has traditionally been done by the HR department are pretty significantly measurable. So some of the impact here is expected to be pretty significant, but at the same time, the human resources department is also kind of being expected to lead the charge of AI adoption, upskilling, training throughout the workforce as well also. So I don't know, is HR the function that's receiving the most attention from AI thus far? Or it
Well,
sounds pretty heavy.
just in our experience, right? Most of the folks we've worked with so far from HR, and we've had several, were completely clueless about AI and knew it, right? But they didn't necessarily want everyone else around them to know it. But haven't used it. They've done like caricatures with it or used it for image generation. But the folks we've worked with haven't really used it for practical use cases. There were a couple that had been using it for some spreadsheet work and things like that. But
Productivity.
I think most of the AI craze has kind of gone a little bit past the HR community that we've worked with. But they're being tasked with or asked to by their leadership teams bring AI into our company. Make sure all of our new hires are AI focused or centered. Make sure we're training the staff on AI. And they're like, oh, I don't even know what AI does. So, first things first, if you're in HR and you're watching this, learn a little bit about the capabilities that exist now. You can go back and watch previous podcasts. You can go through our website. There's tons of information there. But effectively, is the HR job at risk too? Yes, there's huge chunks of the work that HR employees perform that AI can already do well. And you mentioned the promotion thing. I mean, I've seen people get promoted for absolutely no objective measure at
I
all. Like,
think everyone has
he has a
one of
great
those
smile.
stories.
Know what I mean? So that's one of those things where if AI comes in and it has a very strict rubric that it's using for promotion, that'll eliminate the human component of it.
Hmm.
Is that good or bad? Hard to say.
Yeah, it's all
But
subjective.
there are areas of HR now that are very subjective, where really AI is not designed to handle those components. Things that are, you can't necessarily measure on, right? Like let's say you work with someone you know is an alcoholic, they go home and they're just getting plastered every night and they come in drunk the next morning. How's AI going to monitor for that?
Yeah,
Right? There's things that HR knows how to handle that require delicate touch,
definitely.
right? Getting them the right help they need,
Mhm.
putting them on the right program. So there's a lot of things I think there's a lot of room still for HR, is what I'm saying. But I do see AI stepping in on a lot of the more measured,
Mhm.
controlled elements of HR.
Yep. I worked a lot with HR professionals as well also and built HR tech products and things like
That's
it.
right.
So one of the key value adds from HR professionals is they kind of have a pretty good perspective of entire company operations. They're kind of the glue that's holding a lot of those things together. So, very important role, but obviously, based on just the information we've shared here and what some of these companies are already doing, expected to maybe be one of the departments that has the most significant impact
I think
because
so.
of what AI is capable of, which is really interesting. I wouldn't have necessarily intuitively thought that that's where the technology would have gone initially, but certainly as you start to kind of break down the function into what the day to day looks like, you start to see a lot of room for opportunity. So now I think this can sound scary for my HR professionals out there, and I get it. Like everyone has got at least a little bit of anxiety related to all things AI at the moment. But what I think this ideally means moving forward, or how I would like to see it kind of further be implemented, is it takes away the work that you necessarily not necessarily don't want to do, but maybe is a little bit more busy, time consuming, that type of work, like the admin related tasks, because there's so much more value I think HR can provide. And every time, like I mentioned, having spoken with and known a lot of HR professionals for a long time, I've never met one that wasn't overburdened with all the stuff that they have to do because they're kind of like the stopgap for everything, right? Just the list I mentioned initially covers a really wide range of really important critical business functions. And HR is kind of expected to just be an expert in all of them, which I don't know if it's fair necessarily to expect any person or department to be able to do all those things. But what I'm trying to say is I think AI can probably help significantly close that gap, get all of those functions done, but more efficiently if you're leveraging the technology in this way so that you can get back to all of those other areas you've always wanted to provide more value. That's obviously going to be done better by the human type component. So anyway, I think that's
Said by the creator of Staff Geek right here.
that's right. HR tech for the win. I love my HR folks. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious, we've seen a lot of changes happening, but how do you think HR leaders should be thinking of these changes coming? Because they're not just seeing, I think they're the directive maybe for an HR professional right now is from their leadership team or whatever, you know, mad dash rush. We got to figure out what we're doing with AI, which is not just for their function, but the entire company, right? And like you said, some HR professionals may not have a technical background. So I think we should kind of shift gears into providing the best advice that we would for folks that may find themselves in this position now or in the future. What do you think?
Yeah, agreed. I think the two things we've seen so far is the first thing that the HR folks that are tasked with figure out AI have done is kind of find the right place within the organization for a new position called AI director or senior AI leader of some kind. There's even a new chief AI officer position we've seen a couple times. So that's kind of like step one. I think step two, if you are in a position in HR and getting asked or tasked with rolling out AI to the company is do some research. There are a lot of, it's not just us. There's tons of companies out there that are doing this right now that come in, look at your landscape, and help you figure out how to incorporate AI in the right places because you can't just apply AI to everything just yet.
Mhm.
And it's really important to have a strategy for the rollout, and HR should be embracing it. So to your point,
Definitely.
if it may seem scary, it can take away a lot of the busy work. You just said that. I completely agree.
Yep.
Tons of things that HR professionals have to do can be taken off their plate that really isn't adding a whole lot of value to their day. I mean, it's work that has to be done,
Yeah, it's
but you
important work.
don't want to do it.
Yep.
So that can be pushed off, and you can take on more of the human components, which I think most HR professionals I've worked with want to do that, but they don't have the time. So that makes sense.
Well said and agreed. Yeah, how I would think of it is, you know, like James, you talked about kind of eliminating a lot of that busy work. Being more strategic now, I think, is going to be an area where HR is going to have a lot more potential. So I could see a future where HR, because of how much they're expected to leverage the technology, not just within their department, but across the company at this point, end up being one of the more technologically kind of forward facing departments at companies moving forward. Because you're going to have a lot of disruption, but a lot of exposure to the technology. So I think there's a future version of this where we see, a lot of HR professionals who are more technical than maybe even some of the folks who were in the IT department previously, because you're going to know so much more about the technology and have that much exposure to it. So if you're an HR professional out there and you're wondering what the future of your profession or department looks like, I think it's you can't expose yourself enough to this technology now. I mean, we've got crazy numbers in terms of the amount of time that's being saved based on all this experimentation and the work that's being done now from these payroll companies and others who are rolling the technology out to millions of clients. That is a huge area of opportunity for you to provide so much value to your company by leaning into the technology and learning it and looking for areas to apply it. Again, not just in your department, but organization wide. So I would be all over this if I was an HR professional right now, kind of trying to become as much of an expert as you possibly can. I think that makes you not just more value, I think it makes you significantly more valuable, not just your company, but any other company that's going to need HR help in the future.
Yeah, the technologist and business professional inside of me just died a little when you said that, but I think he's right.
It pains you to say that, I know. I'll take the point. Good stuff. So we talked about this a lot, and we'd also love to connect with more HR professionals. Like I mentioned, I have a ton, but if you are an HR professional and you're listening to this content, please reach out. We'd love to have you on the podcast and get from your perspective, day to day on the ground floor there, of what's actually going on. So we can share that with our audience in terms of providing some real world perspective on that as well also. But I think we covered the topic pretty well for this one. Anything else you would add before we
No?
wrap up?
If you want to contact us, it's Sean at whataboutai.com.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. We appreciate it.
Thanks all.